You know, one of my favorite things to do in Dungeons & Dragons lately is to take characters from popular media sources, video games, TV shows, books, movies, whatever, and adapt them to Dungeons & Dragons. And one of my favorite things to do is to see what kinds of weird and creative characters I can make doing this. So I figured I'd make a little tutorial here, maybe make a series out of this in the future if it seems like I can make some other good characters out of this. And I wanted to show you how you can make Frog from Chrono Trigger in your Dungeons & Dragons campaign. Now this will not pertain to one particular edition of Dungeons & Dragons. This can be used with really any D20 system game, any fantasy role-playing game in general, really. So don't worry about if you don't have the right edition or game or whatever. Now the first thing you want to do is you want to make a Gripply. Alright? And Gripply is honestly the best race for doing this. By far. Just honestly straight up, Gripply are the best. A Gripply will work better than a Bullywug, because Gripply are tending to be neutral alignment, whereas Gripply are, or not Gripply, Bullywugs are typically chaotic evil alignment. And so it's going to make a lot less sense for your character's backstory if you pick a Bullywug. So go with a Gripply for your race. Second thing to do is you need to pick one of 3 class options. Now these are just the ones I recommend. You don't have to follow this to the letter, but I would recommend at least following the backstory important stuff. The character I made in my campaign as an NPC ally is a Paladin. Now, he has the ability to use Water Whip once per day. He's actually probably going to get a few more now that he's around level 6. He's probably going to get like 2 or 3 castings per day now. But make sure that if you're having to create a custom Gripply race, you work out all the details with your GM and see if you can get minimal water magic usage for paladins and clerics. Basically, that's going to really help you tie into Frog's character in the game, because he does have a lot of water spells. Now, the reason why Paladin and Cleric are 2 of the best choices is because you also have healing magic. And the point of that is that Toad is actually, or Frog, sorry, Frog in Chrono Trigger is known for using water magic to do things like heal. He can also do splash damage and area of effect, stuff like that. But what you really want is for him to have that water magic in general. You also want him to be a very proud but upstanding warrior who holds honor above everything else. Now, the way Toad, and that's what we're calling him right now, because we shouldn't just go with the exact name of the character, should we? I think Toad works pretty well, because that's why I named mine. If you're going with a paladin, it needs to be a revenge paladin. If you're not familiar with what a revenge paladin is, they're basically your regular paladin, but their drive for becoming a warrior was to get vengeance on someone, usually someone who killed an important family member or friend. And the revenge paladin still seeks out holy justice, but he does it in the sake of revenge, which is not typically thought to be evil, per se, by gods, especially if the paladin is doing it because it's to kill a bad person who has done a lot of other bad things. So a revenge paladin will work quite well. The one last thing I will say about if you're doing a paladin, give him a longsword, but have him wield it like a great sword. So he, wields it with 2 hands and swings it over his head, and, chops at his enemies. It will have to be wielded 2-handed if you're playing 2nd edition, because Gripply are much smaller in that edition. They're like 2.5 feet tall, but it should work out. That's what Toad does. He wields that, and he wields a Warhammer, which in 2nd edition, Warhammers suck. They're like 1d6 damage, and they're like a ball-peen hammer, but you whack it at enemies. Not as impressive. The next option you have is a Cleric. You can usually use a Cleric if you go with the more healing-based route. Once again, make sure he's based on revenge. Probably best bet is a god or goddess of revengeance. So probably want to do something with that. If there's a god or goddess of revengeance, base him on that. Same rules as the previous one, you know, give him a longsword or something, eventually try and get him some water magic access. The third option is actually going to come, in 2nd edition at least, from either the Tome of Magic or it is reprinted in the Player's Option Spells of Magic. That is the Elementalist. Now, I know what you're thinking, well, if he's a mage, how does he wield a sword? The answer is, he's not just a mage. Make him a water elementalist, but multi-class into fighter. And the reason for that is that basically he has all the fighting skills of a fighter, but he still has the full access to the water magic. So by doing that, you get what is probably your most optimal choice for a frog-based character. Because he's really combat-oriented, unlike how the Paladin is just a fighter with some healing abilities and a Cleric is a healer with some fighting abilities. This is someone who is fighting-oriented, but also has the water magic that can be used for combat or for healing if you have something like that in your campaign. Fighter/Elementalist is your best bet. So, that's the hint. Now, stats. Put a lot into strength, because you want to make sure he can wield that longsword, or whatever he's wielding as a sword, you know, as a weapon. Put a decent number of points into whatever he's going to need for magic using, whether it's wisdom or intelligence. And put a good number of points into charisma, like a really good number. Because Toad, is going to be based on Frog, and Frog is known for being pretty charismatic and pretty funny and pretty lovable in Chrono Trigger. Like, he is my favorite character, in my opinion. So, give him a good charisma stat. Finally, what you want to do is make sure that if you're using an addition with system shocks, give him a system shock that is less than 100%. It doesn't really matter how much, just make sure it's less than 100%. And the basic reason for this is part of the backstory, which I will get into now. The backstory for this character is that Toad once went by a different name when he was a human. Yes, he was once a human. However, a Magus came and actually killed his best friend and brother, and polymorphed Toad into his current state as a Gripply. Because Toad had a polymorph, system shock of less than 100%, it is assumed that the spell was so powerful that no matter how high it was, he failed his system shock roll. Therefore, he got trapped into the Gripply state. He has tried to overcome his system shock consistently and has failed every single time. The story reason for this that only you and your GM want to know about at the moment is because the polymorph spell is so powerful that Toad cannot overcome it by any means. He has tried everything he has, and it has led him to the point where he is determined to go and fight, defeat the Magus, and then convince him to turn him back into a human lest he kill the Magus right there and then. Which at this point, he doesn't care if he's stuck as a Gripply forever, he just wants to get his revenge, and most likely he is planning to kill the Magus even if he does get turned back. Now, what you want to focus on for your character development is showing how Toad cares less and less about his revenge, and more about just confronting the Magus and making amends. Not necessarily sparing the Magus completely and saying, oh, he's a good guy now, but getting the Magus to recognize that they did a bad thing and to basically convince the Magus to stop their evil practices, if he can do it without violence. That's going to be Toad's main character development. If you're going to do any character development quests, let them focus on Toad realizing that being a Gripply is not so bad and he should learn forgiveness. This should also tie in, if he is a paladin or a cleric, to his kind of mythos, what he believes in. And it should tie into his older beliefs back before he became a Gripply of, sparing people. So, that is probably really everything you need to do. After that, Toad does not really need full plate mail. If you can get him a good enough strength where he can wear it, he'll probably be fine. But you want him to be more focused on mobility. Doing hops up in the air and flipping over people and slashing them across the head and doing all sorts of acrobatics. So you probably want to give him a decent acrobatic skill and dexterity. If you don't, that's fine. You can have him be a total tank or DPS. But you very much want Toad to be accurate to Chrono Trigger's character. And other than that, that's pretty much all you need to do. Give him a sword, maybe give him a warhammer, make sure he has access to at least a little bit of water magic. Give him the Revengeance backstory, make sure his character development revolves around learning that revenge is not the right path for him and that it can lead down a dark path. And you'll be pretty well off. So, with that in mind, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. The next part of the VentureCast is coming. I just have to go home, get my SD card, finally edit together the last episode, and then, actually release it. Which will probably take an entire day over one of the weekends just to actually upload it. So, probably, if I can get the SD card in time, expect the video to be fully put together on Saturday and released either Saturday or Sunday after I'm back from Comic-Con, which will be the weekend of the 12th is when I'm going to Comic-Con, so it'll probably be the weekend of the 19th that you should see that coming out. But I hope you guys like this, and please remember to like, comment, subscribe. All that stuff really does help with the visibility of these videos in your subscription feed. If you're subscribed, you'll actually see them in your feed, which means you'll get notifications whenever I release a new video. Liking and commenting tell YouTube's algorithms that you want to see more videos like this, which means you won't miss out when the next one comes if I make another one like this. In the meantime, give me some suggestions. Who do you want to see me make an accurate character of for Dungeons and Dragons? To give an example, what if you wanted to make One Punch Man? Let's just say One Punch Man. I can make a video on that. What race you would need to do, what class, all that stuff. So, give me some suggestions. And in the meantime, I am going to go do some stuff now that I'm not going to bother telling you about, and I shall catch you all next time.